Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video I'm going to talk about a question I have from somebody in the school we will call AB. And this person says, as a dismissive avoidant dating an AP, an anxious preoccupied, that sounded like the person's initials AB, so I didn't want to get that confused. How do I know if I'm either just in my, oh, I need space, this is scary phase, or if I genuinely don't have those strong feelings anymore? And so I thought this was such an important question because I get so many questions like this from people, to our email inbox, in the comments on YouTube, all sorts of different places. So what I'm going to go through in this video specifically is 6 key signs that you are still interested in them, both in the short term sort of dating honeymoon phases and in the long term once we reach into like the power struggle, stability, commitment phases, and what might be out of balance or out of order. And then also 6 signs that it might be fear-based behaviors for those of you who are dismissive avoidant and are asking yourselves this question as well. And then I'll go through a little bit of some core exercises you can do to get clear about this at the same time if you haven't clarified from those 6 initial signs in both places. So before I dive in, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I would so appreciate if you could do that. And please also know that we are keeping our sale open and alive until all the craziness is over so we can support our community. We're also adding scholarships again for people, so you can reach out to info@personaldevelopmentschool.com to get more information about that if you want to share a little bit about yourself and your story. And then the coupon code itself is for 25% off of membership bundles for 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. And the coupon code is with you, all one word. And what's the other thing? Oh, and there's a link to it in the box below, and I'll put a card on this video if you're interested in joining. So let's talk about it. This is a big question, and I know, some of you might be like, make this video about dismissive avoidance needing to work on themselves and things like this. I want to acknowledge the person who asked this question because I think it's beautiful that this person is inside of the school. We have many dismissive avoidants in there showing up, doing the work, doing a fantastic job, being really supportive members to our community. I've seen so many people in my practice over the years show up and transform. But the person has to be willing and open to doing the work. And that's, don't worry about people's attachment styles. That's what you're looking for if you're going to create a deadline and think about leaving a relationship. Is this person willing to do the work? And then I'll actually show up and do some of the work myself. And if you just see that they're absolutely unwilling, then that's when you have to make those decisions for yourself. So I just wanted to acknowledge this person for showing up, doing the work, asking this question, being aware of some of their deactivating patterns enough to be able to ask this question. And it's just really beautiful to see. So 6 signs that you're actually still interested in this person is that you're still thinking about them all the time, okay? And this can be you thinking about them in the context of right now and just, wondering what they're doing, what they're up to, these sorts of things. And also you fantasize with them, like, ooh, what if we did this together? Or, oh, and, next year we might think about trying that thing or participating in this thing, like there's some fantasy going on and planning in the future. You feel a need to retract where you're like, ooh, I'm feeling this pull back to retract into myself. But at the same time, I notice that I keep overcoming that and ending up going and showing up and spending time with the person of my own accord, not because I'm like, oh, I should, I have to, I must, I'm pressured to, but because you're like retracting, and at the last minute you're like, no, I want to see them. That's a really important pattern I've seen in DAs. Now I'm going to pause the 6 things and just add one thing in here. Those are your first 3. As somebody in a partnership with a DA and as somebody who's dismissive avoidant themselves, what you're looking for if you are the DA is you're going to see that your net output is basically how much you're interested in the person in competition with how much you're afraid. So if you're interested 8 out of 10, but you're afraid 6 out of 10, it might feel originally like a net 2 positive, and then you might feel like, not that interested, because as that interest shows up and the fears aren't there too much at the beginning because you're not so vulnerable, as the vulnerability starts, the fears grow because it triggers a lot of those fear-based and stored beliefs that say, I'm unsafe being vulnerable, or I will be abandoned, or bad things will happen, or something's wrong with me, shame, these sorts of things, okay? So those are some things that can rise up, and then it can make you question your feelings because those two parts of yourself are in competition. Okay, so what you want to do with that, and I'll come back to like a bigger thing because we're going to stay on the 6 things. I'll come back to like a bigger exercise around this, but what you want to notice is like, if those fears were gone, how would I feel? And if all of those fears didn't exist, would I just feel indifferent? Or would I feel still like, oh my gosh, so free and excited to connect? Okay, and that's a good question to ask yourself. So, and remember too, if you're the partner of the DA, that's probably what's happening, right? And so you have to ask yourself too, as the partner, like, if I'm getting a net positive too, does this dismissive avoidant person want to show up and work on their fears? Or are they disinterested? And then how does it feel to be on the recipient end of that? And do I need to set boundaries around that for myself? So just to address both perspectives there. So another big thing can be that, so you might find yourself opening up little by little is our number 4, okay? And you might find that there's this sort of openness coming out, even though you didn't intend for that openness to be there. Like, there's more vulnerability, there's more connection, there's all these different things. You might find a protectiveness around the person or a relationship. It's interesting because I feel like dismissive avoidants have this a lot, but it's from afar and they don't express it outwardly, but it can be something that they very much experience inwardly. It's like subtle but strong, if that makes sense. So that's your number 5. And then lastly, you feel open and willing to accommodate things with a person and their needs. And you may not know what to do and what it looks like all the time, but you feel open and willing to try, despite that internal resistance. And again, what that's a sign of is that your care for the person is outweighing that internal resistance. So what do you want to do? You want to be able to diminish that internal resistance, figure out what that's all made up of at the belief and story and unmet need level, do the work around that, and then you can get really clear to fully see without the fog of the fear how much you're caring and invested in the relationship, okay? So those are the short-term pieces. Long-term, if you're in a long-term relationship and you're feeling doubts and like your feelings are retracting, the fear of losing them really hurts, and it more than it gives you relief, okay? If you actually imagine into the future not being with them, you're not like, oh my gosh, that would feel like a huge relief. You're like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm feeling resistance to the relationship, but that would still really hurt, okay? And usually, again, that's a sign of having a lot of care, but that care is just being sort of obscured or like blocked out by some of those core-based, fear-based beliefs. So, another big one is you feel a very strong current within you of wanting and not wanting, even though it might seem to equilibrate, okay? So you feel this, like, as a dismissive avoidant, you're usually pretty, like, you know, consistent in how you feel, but you might feel like a little bit almost of like a similarity, but to a much lesser degree, of the fearful avoidance inner turmoil. Like, I want to go near them, I want to be with them, but I need space, I want to get away. And sort of this like back and forth push-pull that's going on. And I'm going to tell you at the end in the exercise what to do about that as well. And one is basically based on a desire, and the other is based on a programmed fear. So I want you to know that. If you feel a push-pull, chances are one's like, I want connection, I want that longing. And the other might be, well, I feel unsafe, or it feels like too much, or I feel, you know, whatever it might be. Now, if it's with that person, you have to be specific about that too, right? Most dismissive avoidants aren't too like, oh, I can't wait to be in a relationship and have all of that. Most of them are like, no, I'm interested in the person. And that can be the push-pull. So you usually won't have like a competing need between like wanting to be alone versus to be in a relationship. You'll have a competing experience between your care for a person and the fears that are associated with the vulnerability required to participate in that relationship. And then you might also find, as 2 other things long-term, that you're still very attracted to the person and that you enjoy many things about the person. So if you're finding yourself in that place where all of that's happening, chances are that your deactivating is actually deactivating. It's not like, oh, I'm losing connection or care or indifference. It's deactivation. And another thing I would say too is, as a dismissive avoidant going through that, if you're questioning it, there's a pretty good chance that it's not just I'm indifferent, because dismissive avoidants, when they feel pretty indifferent, like I don't care anymore, they're pretty good at leaving and showing up for themselves. So to me, even the question being posed is probably a sign. But again, check in with all these things, because you know, I'm not a mind reader. I'm just really good at recognizing patterns and have asked many, many questions and talked to many people over the years. But what you'll see is that there's, even you asking that question is a sign that you probably have like this competition within you instead of this indifference in your like or attraction to somebody, and then the deactivating coming up. Because if that were the case, you'd be out of there pretty quick. So 6 signs that it's fear-based specifically. You can check in with these as well. It seems to come on all of a sudden. It seems like you woke up one day and something just happened. But usually all of a sudden might seem like all of a sudden in time, but something very specific has happened in time, meaning that like you were triggered, like a program was triggered. Somebody said something about somebody else in a relationship. Somebody said something about that was critical, that was painful. Somebody's demanding a lot and you're starting to feel like, well, I'm trying to meet their needs and they're not meeting mine, because you might not be expressing them, right? And so you want to get in touch with that and see if that's there for you. If you're a dismissive avoidant listening to this, or AB asking this question. And so you want to get clear, like, what's going on. And if it's all of a sudden, the all of a sudden isn't actually just all of a sudden. We don't actually just wake up one day and like our life changes or our feelings change. What's happened is something triggered an experience, or something was the catalyst trigger after a whole bunch of things. So for example, maybe you had emotionally repressed that your needs were being unmet for a long period of time. And finally one day it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm putting so much into this relationship and they're not meeting my needs in the way that I need, because you might not know what they are and you might not be communicating them. And so you might not be receiving fully, but then feel like you're giving a lot for what you have to give, because you might be emotionally neglecting yourself to a certain degree and running on empty, which means your gas tank is naturally smaller or less filled, even though it might be the same size in actuality. And then you're being asked to give the little bit of your gas back more than you can get replenished in your tank, and you start to feel panicky and need to withdraw. So that can be a really big thing. So there can also be competing needs and feelings. And so it's not one-sided. It's not like a one-sided need to escape. So you can think of it this way. Like if it's fear-based, you're actually going to feel this like push-pull and this panic, because it's like, oh my gosh, it comes on all of a sudden. It's like strong. It's like this feeling like panic, get away, run away, which is actually a survival response based on like subconscious programs and pain points within the subconscious mind. If you compare that to like the experience, for example, of being like rooted and grounded and living life and then just losing feelings and attraction to the person, it's not going to feel so fight or flighty. It's going to feel like, yeah, I'm not interested anymore and I've decided, and it's going to sort of be something that takes place over time, and then you're going to be willing to leave, right? And so that panic feeling or the pullback, if it's more emotionally based, you can pretty much guarantee that it's a strong deactivating strategy. And then another thing is you might notice that there are times where you're actively deactivating or telling yourself painful stories, okay? And again, that's more the result of having like a moment where a wound or fear was triggered. So those are your signs that it's fear-based. So what do? Well, you want to get really clear. You're not trying to get clear about the attraction, because you're going to see at the end if that's there or not there. You're trying to remove anything that's blocking you from feeling those feelings and trying to work through all those stories and all those things. And then at the end, it's like pulling back the curtains to see if the feeling still exists behind the curtains, right? So what you want to do is you want to do a dump on paper. Have things been triggering me lately? Do I feel like my needs are met? Do I feel understood by my partner? Have I been being criticized more than I'm used to? Do I feel like demands are things that I can't show up for and give? And do I feel disempowered to be able to share my fears around that and communicate what my boundaries are? And, that I might need to communicate my needs a little better and work on receiving, so that I feel like my gas tank can be replenished. And then there can be an exchange in a relationship, and things can start to ramp up and be better from there. What are my core wounds that are showing up? What do I believe about vulnerability, about relationships, about commitment? Are those things alive for me right now? Like, oh my gosh, what if I get abandoned? Or what if this person gets interested in somebody else? Is the core wound of shame coming up? Something's wrong with me coming up? If that's the case, In any of those ways, if it's story-based, you want to do the work on equilibrating those stories and reprogramming those wounds. If it's needs-based, not feeling seen, understood, heard, those sorts of things, or not feeling like your boundaries are respected, or that somebody's understanding you in terms of like being critical in how they communicate with you, then you want to go have those conversations and express those needs and stand up and show up for them. And once you've done the work on those things, you'll start to feel more in alignment. That fear will dissipate, and then it'll be really clear for you. Oh yeah, like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to connect with this person. The relationship feels so much better. I so appreciate it. Or, oh, I did all that work. I learned, I grew. This was really helpful to me. And now I realize that I'm truly disinterested in this person. So do the work, try to move the needle, and get really, really clear. And then from there, you'll be able to see. And just to note as well, if you're the person on the recipient end of the situation, what that's going to look like is that somebody's going to show up and communicate differently. And that gives a huge bridge for like how to bond, how to connect. This is the path to becoming secure. And so by one person showing up and doing this work, they also offer and extend that to another person to be able to communicate that way, to be able to show up that way. And it creates a context, and the person leads by example to help both parties become more secure. And then if the relationship doesn't work, both people knew. And also, if you're on the recipient end and this person's doing the work and they're doubting their feelings, by them doing the work, it's a way of them showing up for the relationship, because they're not trying to drag somebody along and just see and just play the hot cold game and maybe leave and then come back because they weren't sure. They're actually doing that inner work so that they can clearly set a boundary, which can empower somebody else to move on if the dismissive avoidant isn't interested, and do their healing work and be able to then get into a different relationship at some point later and build up a relationship with themselves, most importantly first. Or the dismissive avoidant shows up, does the work, and a lot of the time, if people are asking this or wondering this as the DA, and if they feel a back and forth, a lot of the time, what's actually happening here is that they really do care. There really is a lot of love, and so they show up, they communicate, they do the work, and then things really start to resolve. So I just want to acknowledge again AB for asking this, for showing up, for being vulnerable in the community, and I hope everybody can be super kind in the comments about dismissive avoidance, and be mindful that we're all human beings working on ourselves and taking part in our journey. And I ask that for all attachment styles and all videos. I'm going to start saying that at the end of a lot of videos. And I just wanted to say a great big thank you to everybody who's here, who's asking, who's learning, who's growing, who's supporting each other in the comments and everywhere else. And I will see you in the next video.